All right, let's get right into one of the biggest philosophical showdowns of the 20th century. We're going to break down a really powerful argument against an idea that, on the surface just sounds like plain old common sense.
We've all heard this, right? It's the heart of a theory called utilitarianism, and it just feels intuitive. The idea is to set up society to maximize happiness and well-being for as many people as we can. It sounds efficient, it sounds democratic, it sounds fair. And for a long, long time, this was pretty much the dominant way to think about justice.
And this is the question that changes everything. What if your happiness, your rights, or maybe even your freedom has to get sacrificed for the benefit of that greatest number? This is the exact moral problem that kept the philosopher John Rawls up at night, and it led him to build one of the most powerful critiques of utilitarianism ever. So this really gets to the core of the danger that Rawls saw. Utilitarianism promises the best overall outcome, sure, but it does it by treating all of society like one single person, where a little bit of pain over here can be justified by a whole lot of pleasure over there. Think about it like this. Utilitarianism basically allows for a trade-off. The losses that a few individuals have to suffer are seen as totally acceptable if they lead to even bigger gains for the group as a whole. So, in theory, the fundamental rights of a minority could be sacrificed if it makes the majority way, way happier. And this was Rawls's big objection. For him, this wasn't just some tiny little flaw in the theory, it was a total, catastrophic failure of justice. See, society isn't one big person. It's made up of a bunch of separate individuals, and each one of us has our own life to live, our own dignity. A just system, he argued, can't just cross out one person's rights because it makes the final math look better. Okay, so if Rawls is throwing out the dominant theory, what's he going to replace it with? Well, he offered a complete, systematic alternative he called justice as fairness. And it was a total rethink of how we should design the basic rules of society from the ground up. At its heart, Rawls wanted to build a theory of justice starting with one simple idea, that every single person is a free and equal citizen. The whole goal was to figure out a set of principles for our institutions, our constitution, our laws, our economy, where the basic rights of every single person are completely non-negotiable. So how in the world do you find principles that are genuinely fair to everyone? How do you stop people from just picking rules that benefit themselves? Rawls came up with this absolutely brilliant thought experiment to solve this exact problem, a way to force total impartiality. He asks us to imagine a scenario he calls the original position. You can think of it like a constitutional convention that happens before society even exists. You have representatives of all future citizens gathered together to agree on the basic rules. But, and this is key, there's one massive catch. They have to make this huge decision from behind what he calls a veil of ignorance. What does that mean? It means they know nothing about who they'll be in this new society. They don't know their race, their gender, or their social class. They have no idea if they'll be born talented or with disabilities. They don't even know their own religious beliefs or what their personal goals in life will be. By stripping away all this personal info, the veil makes it impossible for anyone to rig the rules in their own favor. Now, even though they're in the dark about themselves, these representatives are still rational. They know that no matter who they turn out to be, they're going to need certain all-purpose tools to live a good life. Rawls calls these primary goods, things like basic rights and liberties, opportunities, income, and, maybe most important of all, the social conditions that give you self-respect. Their whole goal is to make sure they get as many of these essential goods as possible. So what happens? What happens when you put rational people who want the best for themselves but have no idea who they'll be in this perfectly fair choosing situation? What principles of justice do they actually end up agreeing on? Well, Rawls argues they'd use a super cautious, risk-averse strategy called maximin. The stakes here are as high as they get. You're choosing the rules for your entire life. You're not going to gamble with your fundamental rights. So what do? You look at the worst possible outcome under each option, and you pick the system that has the best worst-case scenario. You maximize your minimum position. You play it safe. And here is the showdown. The worst possible outcome under utilitarianism is being part of an oppressed minority, having your rights sacrificed for the so-called greater good. From behind the veil, that's an intolerable risk. No rational person would ever take that gamble. So they would reject utilitarianism and instead choose a much safer, more secure set of principles. And here they are, the winning principles. First, and with absolute priority, Every single person gets the same full set of equal basic liberties. This comes before everything else. Second, any social and economic inequalities are only allowed if they meet two tough conditions. They have to be attached to jobs and positions open to everyone. And crucially, they have to work to the greatest possible benefit of the least advantaged people in society.
Now, that strict priority of the first principle, it is absolutely critical. It's Rawls's structural fix for the problem of utilitarianism. Let's look at how this creates a system where individual rights are, for all intents and purposes, untouchable.
The first principle basically acts like a shield. It takes our most fundamental liberties, freedom of thought, freedom of speech, the rule of law, and it puts them completely off the table. You cannot trade them away for more money or for the happiness of the majority. They become, as another philosopher put it, trumps that beat any hand played for the collective good.
And even the economy has to be fair. Inequalities in wealth and income aren't okay just because they exist. They're only justified if they actually make life better for the person at the very bottom of the ladder. Now, this isn't about charity, it's about what Rawls called equality-based reciprocity, structuring society as a fair, cooperative project where we all rise together.
Okay, so this is all really interesting philosophy, but why does this debate from 50 years ago still have such a massive impact on how we think about justice and law today? Well, it's because these abstract ideas provide the philosophical DNA for so many of our most important institutions. That idea that we have these deeply protected constitutional rights that a majority can't just vote away, that's a direct echo of Rawls's first principle. The argument for social safety nets to help the least well-off, that's his difference principle, in action. And the drive for strong public education to make sure everyone gets a fair shot, that's fair equality of opportunity. Ultimately, what Rawls gave us was a powerful, systematic language to explain why individual dignity matters so much. He built a fortress of reason to defend the idea that the number one job of a just society is to protect the rights and the standing of each and every one of its members, not just to add up the grand total of happiness. And so his work leaves us with this huge, enduring question, one that sits right at the heart of democratic life. It's a question that challenges us every day to think about what we truly owe to one another as free and equal citizens. And finding that right balance, well, that is the permanent and essential work of justice.